Okay. Hello. Would you mind just introducing yourself and giving us a brief overview of the battle over Sheikh Jarrah and what the hearing this morning was about?
I'm Hagit Ofran. I work in Peace Now at the Settlement Watch project, and I follow very closely the issue of settlements in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, and specifically Sheikh Jarrah is now on our mind all the time because of many court cases that were filed against Palestinians by settlers to be evicted from their homes are now getting to its final line, and one of the cases is now at the table of the Supreme Court that should decide today or tomorrow whether to hear their appeal or to reject it on spot. And if they are rejected, they might be kicked out of their homes very soon. So we are talking about a real drama in East Jerusalem that has to do with hundreds of people eventually, because this lawsuit that is now pending in court is only, quote unquote, for 4 houses with 27 people living there, but there are other cases on other houses with more people, and in Silwan, in Batan el Hawa, there are even more. So we're talking about a total of over 1,000 people today in East Jerusalem that have an eviction lawsuit by settlers who are asking them to be kicked out of their house with nothing.
Okay, and then so what was this? This morning there was a hearing. Could you tell us what was decided in that hearing? And what impact this decision may have?
In Sheikh Jarrah file for the 4 houses, they are at the stage of a request to appeal in the Supreme Court because they lost the magistrate court and then they lost their appeal in the district court. It's not automatic that you have the right to appeal to the Supreme Court. You need to get the permission to appeal. So they requested a right to appeal, and the judge decided to call the sides to a preliminary discussion where she pushed for a compromise. And that took place on Sunday. She put a lot of pressure to for the sides to get a compromise, and gave them a deadline of today at 1 o'clock, like 30 minutes ago, where they had to declare to court whether they got an agreement or not. And what happened is that they told the court that they failed to get an agreement, and now we are waiting for the decision of the Supreme Court whether their request to appeal will be heard or rejected on spot.
Okay, so what do you think is likely to happen next? Do you think this appeal is likely to succeed or rejected?
I don't know what will happen with this specific request to appeal. I hope, I pray that the judge will allow it to be heard so that, first of all, we get more time. Second of all, we might be able to raise the issue more to the public opinion and more awareness, because, however, the likelihood of a legal success here is very low, because the basis of the lawsuits is discriminatory law that Israel legislated back in 1970 after the annexation of 70 square kilometers to Jerusalem in 1967, they had to arrange a few things about it. And one of the things was what to do with land that was owned by Jews before 48 and then were managed by the Jordanians in East Jerusalem. And this law says that those properties in East Jerusalem that were owned by Jews before 48 will return to the original owner. And the settlers took advantage of this law and took those properties and started to kick out Palestinians from their homes based on ownership reform before 48. And I say that it's a discriminatory law because in 48, in the same war, there were many, many more Palestinians who lost their properties in Israel. And for them, the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, legislated a law in 1950 saying that they cannot claim their properties back. So we have same circumstances, the 48 war, and two different laws. One for Palestinians that don't allow them to return, and another for Jews in East Jerusalem that allows them to return. And that's the law. And therefore, the courts have big trouble to say, well, actually you don't own it, or I give your property to the Palestinians, etc., because the law says differently. So it's very, very hard, although there are ways, there are legal ways, I believe, for courts to make justice. But until now, we did not have any judge that ruled against the eviction of Palestinians based on this law.
Right. And when are we likely to hear more news about the results in this appeal, the decision on the appeal?
It could be from minutes from now to a few days. There is no official deadline for a decision for the court. So we don't know exactly when she's going to give her decision. We know, as for the case in Batan el-Hawa, which is very similar or based on the same idea that land was owned by Jews before 48 and now hundreds of Palestinians are under threat of being evicted, also got to a request to appeal the Supreme Court. And in that case, the judge asked the Attorney General to give his opinion on this issue. And it's very rare that in a civil case between two sides that are arguing ownership, the court will say, I want to know what the state has to say about it. But that's what the court said, because they understand that it's, first of all, it has far-reaching implication of over hundreds of people, but that it's actually a political matter. And I think, and I'm telling this because the timeline is that the Attorney General should give his opinion by May 31st. And I think now is the time to put pressure on the government to tell the Attorney General that it's not okay that hundreds of residents of Israel will be kicked out of their homes based on discriminatory law. And in fact, Israel is claiming that Palestinians don't have the right to return, and that Israelis who live in Palestinian homes in Jerusalem, in Jaffa, in Haifa, in Lod, they are not going to be kicked out. And if we are allowing it to happen to Palestinians, we are undermining the moral basis of the Israeli claim. And I think it's also something that should be taken into consideration.
Yes, I definitely hear that there needs to be pressure from Israeli citizens. But on that note, what can residents of the UK and specifically British Jews do to support Palestinian residents who are at risk of being dispossessed and displaced from their homes, and to oppose their ongoing displacement?
So, as I said, it is a political matter of displacing a group of Palestinians and settling a group of Israelis instead in the capital of Israel. And it is being done through legal means. The tool is the courts, but the idea is political. And there is no eviction of any Palestinian family in East Jerusalem that is not done after an approval of the government because of its politically very sensitive. And therefore, any pressure on the government, especially now that they are supposed to file their opinion, is very, very important. And unfortunately for me, I think, Israeli pressure is not enough to make our government move. We need all the allies from abroad to also speak out. And unfortunately, the government of Israel sometimes listen more to voices that are coming from abroad, from countries like the UK, that is a friend of Israel. And if they will hear that this is not something that is liked in the UK, maybe it will have some effect on the government. And also on the Israeli discourse, we see sometimes that when something is being discussed widely abroad, only then the Israeli media will wake up and say, oh, there is an interesting story, like the Guardian said something bad about Israel or something about Israel, so now suddenly it's news in Israel. So any way to speak out, to bring it up in the social media, to make the officials of the UK speak about it or share it is actually helping and making a movement.
Thank you so much, Hagit, for your time. I think we'll stop there, but thank you again for taking the time to speak to us about this. And I hope we.
And if I may, I hear.
Yeah.
I hear from time to time things that Na'amod are doing in the UK, and we hear about it, and it's sometimes even reported. And so your work is very much appreciated, and it's not just happening there. It has an effect. It's not running the world, but it's affecting it.
I think that's like a really important thing to hear. So thank you for saying that. You know, I think we all British Jews need to remember that they can have an impact through relationships with their synagogues and their institutional Jewish bodies. Yeah, so thank you for saying that. Okay, we will stop here, but thank you again so much. And we'll hopefully get some good news on this, and if not, then we'll keep supporting the work that Peace Now does on the ground. So thank you very much.